So we have three topics to discuss first. They are manual correlation, and next group configuration, it includes learning about groups in Sailpoint, populations, and work groups. Okay, and finally we have account correlation. No, not account correlation, account mapping. Okay, so these are the three concepts that we are going to learn, and post that we will be starting with policies in Sailpoint. Okay, so starting with a manual correlation. So you know what is a correlation, right? So the main intention of correlation is correlating the non-authoritative application accounts with authoritative application data. In the authoritative application, we would be having the identities. In the non-authoritative application, we would be having the entitlements. So these entitlements we are supposed to allocate to the authoritative identity cubes. If they get allocated, we say correlation is successful. Okay, that is the intention of correlation. So while we are doing the correlation, some accounts, because correlation happens when the match is successfully found. Okay, we will be correlating having a key like employee ID equal to employee ID. Employee ID in the non-authoritative application matching with the employee ID in the authoritative application. So we will be putting a correlation logic, and based upon the correlation logic, the correlation would happen. Okay, if there is some mismatch, the correlation couldn't happen. So when we have ran the aggregation task for some applications, we saw like identities created. Okay, so when we saw that identity is created in a non-authoritative application, it means uncorrelated identities got created. Okay, so either you can leave those uncorrelated accounts, or else we can manually correlate them as well. So automatically correlating means by writing a correlation logic. So when you run it, the correlation would happen. Otherwise, you would be doing the manual correlation. So that is the intention. So that is about this manual correlation. So let me just implement the manual correlation. So it is pretty simple. Only thing is the explanation is a bit more, but the configuration is pretty simple. If I just go to identities and identity correlation, so this is a place where you will be doing the correlation. And if you see here, select uncorrelated accounts and select the target identity which you wanted to correlate with manually. So there is an application. If I want to just go to task and task definition or task result, see this financial aggregation task, we have like 4 identities created. So what does these 4 identities created means? It means 4 uncorrelated identities got created. Okay, we can manually correlate these 4 uncorrelated accounts. So go to identities, identity warehouse, select the application, it will display all those 4 uncorrelated accounts. See, all those uncorrelated accounts got displayed here. So we can correlate with any of the account over this target identity. So there may be a case like the match is a proper match only, but due to some incorrect information, the match was not done. For example, we have an account called Angie Bell. Okay, so we have this account called Angie Bell. So we have a target identity called Angela Bell. So basically, this identity should have been mapped to this particular identity if the correlation logic was successful. Since the match was not successful, it created an uncorrelated account. So what would happen if you open these if you open these identities, you will be getting to know. So let me open this Angela Bell account first. So if I open this Angela Bell application accounts, you can see this particular identity have an account in HR employee, LDAP and time tracking application. This particular identity should also should have that what do you see? financial application account, but it didn't happen. Why? Because correlation didn't happen. So this particular application account was assigned to that Angibel identity. So Angibel came from the finance application. This is an uncorrelated account, hence no data would be there. See, this particular identity is part of having an account financial application. So now what is our intention is we will be doing the correlation manually, which means this financial application account will be going and allocated to the Angela Bell identity. Okay, that is the main intention. Now go ahead and do that. Select the identity and select the target identity like this. Okay, click on perform merge. Done. Now go ahead to the identity warehouse. Check both the identities now. See, we got the financial application account assigned to Angela Bell. Okay. Now let me see that Angibel account. See, no application accounts. So this is the main intention of having the manual correlation in Sailpoint. So this particular identity have no use or no proper necessity in the tool, right? In the project, right? So we can delete such kind of an identities. Rather deleting an individual identity. So we can go ahead to the debug page and we can select this particular identity and we can delete it. So rather deleting like manually, we have a task that we can execute it. So when we execute the task, it will check that kind of an identities and it will delete all those such kind of an identities from Sailpoint, which have no proper links or no proper application accounts. Those data would be deleted. So how you can delete it? Go to the setup and task. The task name is prune identity cubes like this. Okay. Right click on the task, execute in background. So see, prune identity cubes task got executed. If you open it and check it out, see, one identity got deleted. Total 236. Identity is protected. 235. One identity got deleted. If you want to go ahead and check that identity won't be present. Like this. Okay. Okay. So let's continue. So now we are going to learn about groups in Sailpoint. So groups, populations, and work groups in Sailpoint. Where I was like, you have groups, right? So just go to setup and groups. So basically in this group configuration, we have three components to learn. One is groups, populations, and work groups. So main intention of this group configuration is like to capture the identities and form a group. Okay. So capture some set of identities and forming a group is called as this group configuration. In this, we have these three components or sub categories. So in all these three categories, we will be end of the day capturing the group of people or group of identities. But these three are used at different places. Okay, has their own significances. So groups and populations are used, will be used in the certification. If you want to certify some group of people based upon some filter criteria, we will be using these groups and populations. So for one of the certification type called as advanced certification, we would be using these groups and populations. Whereas work groups, so work groups are being used to create the owners. Okay. For example, if any particular application or a role or a policy has multiple owners, okay, we would be having only one drop down, right? When we want to select a owner, we would be seeing only one drop down. Okay. Instead of adding one particular owner, that particular object may have multiple owners. So if you get a requirement to add multiple owners to one particular object like application or role or policies or certification, where you would be having only one drop down. So there you will be creating a work group, and that work group will be acting like an identity entity. Okay, it will be also acting like work group also will be acting like an identity entity, and that identity entity you will be adding it to the object owner, the application owner, or a role owner, or a certifications owner. So like that, the work groups will be created in Sailpoint. So how you will be creating this group? So I have a small rule, a one-liner rule. Let me just import that, and then I'll be creating a group first. Don't go with the naming convention, guys. Just it's a small rule to get the group names. So I've written a small rule for that. So how we can get it? So go to the setup groups, create new group. Give a name to it. So here groups will be created based upon one filter condition, and subgroups will be getting added. For example, here the group attribute is mentioned as status. So how many status do we have? Employee, contractor, and also the uncorrelated identities will be having no kind of a status. So these three kind of a categorized people, or three kind of a subgroups that will be getting created. See how it will be getting created. So I'm just giving a name called test group. Group attribute status only I'm putting it. Enabled group status rule. I'm just putting it. Nothing much will be there in this rule. Just one liner. Group dot get name. That's it. So I'm just saving this particular group. So how do you fetch the data? Like how do you get the data from this particular configuration? Is we are going to run a task. Okay. So what is the task name? Let me just go ahead, go to setup and tasks. As of now, the data is not present, right? So once we run this refresh groups task, then you will be getting the data. Execute in background. So wait for this to be completed. So it got completed. Total identities examined are 235 identities. Now if you just go to setup and groups, see employer, contractor, and no test group. So there are around 6 identities which are uncorrelated identities, which doesn't have any, which are not part of any either employee or contractor status. So like this, the group data has been created. So by looking at it, we got to know, right, now 157 employees are there and the remaining are like contractors. So this is the segregation of groups. Now same way, the population, if you just go to setup and groups and again for population. So populations directly we cannot create it over here. You cannot see like any create population kind of a button, right? Just like create group, we don't see any create population button over here. Then how you will create a population? So basically population you will be creating based upon multiple filter criteria. Groups you have created with only one filter criteria, right? Whereas population you will be filtering the data with multiple filter conditions, like based upon the region, based upon the status, based upon the employee ID, based upon their manager data. So some multiple data you can just put it, and based upon that, how many identities got filtered. So those many identities you will be capturing as a population. So how do you do that? Go to the intelligence and advanced analytics. So you know, right, advanced analytics is the search engine. If you want to search for any identity, you will be searching in the advanced analytics only. So not only the identity, any kind of a data, if you want to search it in your project, you will be getting it from the advanced analytics section only. So scroll down a bit. Applications, or not the application, I'll just select it like status equal to employee, region equal to Americas, and is manager equal to 2. I'll just add some 3 conditions. I just clicked on run search and I can see around 16 identities got captured. Based upon my filter condition, 16 identities got captured. Okay, your based upon your filter conditions, your identity count may vary, but based upon my filter condition, it's like 16 identities got captured. and these 16 identities I wanted to capture as a population. So click on this result options below this, save identities as population. Click on that and give a name. So I'm just giving some name called test population and then save it. So once you have saved it, now go to setup and groups. No need to run any kind of a task. The data will be already populated. See, 16 identities got captured. Okay. So now we have created the group of data. We have learned about the populated data. Okay. Now we would be learning about the work groups in Sailpoint. End of the day, the core concept is same. Capturing the group of identities and storing it in one object. That is the entirely the group configuration significance. But where they are used, that matters. So now work groups, you have a create work group button, click on it. So I'm just giving a name, something called demo work group. Owner, I'm giving like administrator. So this is owner of the group. Okay. So group email, generally you will be putting your group DLs. In your company, you might have seen the group DLs, right? Distribution lists. If you send a like info@your company name.com. So some list of people, some group of people will be receiving the emails. So that kind of a group email, you can just put it here if you have created that. Next, notification also, notify members and group email, notify group email only, notify members only. So this complete configuration, you can just do it. Capabilities, you can assign any capability based upon your this. If you apply the capability, all these members will be allocated with that same capabilities. Like if you assign a system administrator capability, so this particular work group and the identities present in that particular work group will be having the capability of an administrator. So like that, I'm going to say. So now here you can add the members. So click on this, select the any member, add member. Select any member, add member. Select any member, add member, like this. So I'm saving it. So I've added 3 identities, right? And I've created a work group called as a demo work group. So if you open any application, for example, open any application. Select the owner. See, demo work group came in the list, right? Because this will be considered as one of the identities. Okay, so that is the reason you will be able to see it in the identity warehouse. Not in the identity warehouse, I want to say identities list. So any questions in these groups, populations and work groups, guys? Okay, so let's continue. So the next topic is like account mapping. So that is very optional, just for your learning or understanding. I'm just putting it, nothing much that we are going to implement that particular object. So just go to global settings. So we have already learned about identity mapping, right? The similar way the account mapping will be there. So in the what is the intention of identity mapping? We are letting Sailpoint know which identity needs to be mapped to which attribute in Sailpoint. Okay, which identity attribute needs to map to the which identity attribute present in the Sailpoint. So we had mapped the data. Similar way, we have some certain accounts. So we have some application that contains some accounts like a service account, a privileged account, inactive account, like that. Okay, so we have an application called as a financial application. So let me just show you that. So if you carefully observe here, we have some kind of a data like app to privileged, app to service, app to inactive. So they are Boolean values like false, 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 true, false, false, like that. So every user has some access and having their accounts, their kind of an accounts in Sailpoint, having a service account, having an inactive account, having a privileged account. So these certain accounts that we have it in Sailpoint. So those accounts you need to map in the configuration to make Sailpoint understand, okay, we have certain accounts and this you can just use it for the risk model purposes. So let me just go ahead and configure those. So click on identity mapping, just the same way how we have done with the identity mapping, we'll be doing the account mapping. So defaultly there won't be any accounts. So we have 3 accounts that we are going to map it in Sailpoint. So click on add new attribute. Give a name here. So service, I'm giving it. Service account. Attribute type, I'm putting it as Boolean. Searchable, I'm enabling it. Add source, select the application, select the attribute app to service and save. There are 2 more applications also, that is PAM and Prism application. You can take it as a homework and you can complete it. If you ignore this particular topic also, it's completely fine. It doesn't gonna harm anything of your project. It is completely an optional topic that you need to consider. Next, privileged. Save it. Next, the lastly, inactive account. Done. Okay, this is the configuration for the account mapping. So once after you add the 2 more applications, you can run the account aggregations also if you have time, or else if you leave it till here also, that's completely fine. So this is about the account mapping in Sailpoint. So the next topic that we have it is the policies that we are going to start with. So let me just go with the theoretical thing and then we will be coming back to practicals. So let's start with an object or a new component in Sailpoint that is called as policies in Sailpoint. Now, what is meant by policies? So we would be discussing about identity IQ policies overview, different types of policies, defining the policies in Sailpoint, discovering and managing policy violations, monitoring policy violations in Sailpoint. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss in this particular topic. So what is meant by a policy? So in every organization, there will be some set of rules and regulations will be setting up, right? The employees should follow that. Like you need to log in at so and so time, log out at so and so time. You are a developer and you should not have a testing server access. You are a manager and you should not have some kind of an developer access that he is just accessing. For example, there is a finance team, the person who calculates your salaries, okay, and distributes your salaries, right? At the same kind of an access, his manager also won't be having it. His manager will be only having an access to approve those certain accesses to give to that employee. But whatever the employee has the access to distribute the salaries, the manager won't be having it. So that is one kind of a thing. And you're not accessing an application. There is an application given to you and you're not accessing that application for a certain duration of time. For 3 months or 4 months, you're not accessing that particular account. Then your account may be getting disabled. So that is like one kind of a requirement. So like these and a number of regulations that you will be observing in the organization, right? So those set of policies or those set of regulations that have been set in the organization, you can configure in Sailpoint in such a way called as policies. Okay. So identity IQ policies define the access business policies of your enterprise. That is the definition. For example, can't have both approve vendor and pay vendor. The same example which I have given you, right? The financial team, the people, the person who will be distributing the salary and the manager won't be having the same access. So policies are defined specifically for your environment using data from your environment. That includes identity attributes, application attributes, risk scores, roles, and entitlements. So this is the data that is being stored under the policies. Next, compliance and provisioning. So this is just for your theoretical understanding. We have certain policies which are being used in compliance, and we have certain policies that will be helpful in the provisioning or preventive case. So let me give you a small example for this preventive and detective kind of a policies. So we have set a policy to check the person who should not log into the environment, like the developer should not log into a test environment. Okay, that is the policy that we have set. Okay, so while we have set that particular policy, what is the requirement here is like for example, I am a developer. Okay, I move to a testing team. Okay, all my development access should be removed, but what had happened is like some of my development access was still being there. Hence I had to log into some development portal and I have made some changes. So after making the changes, a policy violation has been triggered on my identity, saying you are unauthorized access and you have made some changes. Hence, your identity will be coming under the policy violation, and your policy violation will be taken care by your manager. That is a kind of a thing that will happen, and that comes under the detective case. Okay, you already had logged into an unauthorized access and made some changes. So that kind of a policy comes under the policies in compliance. The same example. So if we have a policy, the developer should not have a testing server access. So the same case, the tester, the same I am a developer and I was trying to access, like I moved to a testing team and now I'm trying to access to one of my development server, which I don't have access to. All my development server access have been revoked, but I'm trying to access to the development environment. So since I'm trying to access to the development environment, what happened? I tried for multiple times and the access got denied. So since after I tried for multiple times, what had happened is like my access got removed and a policy violation has been triggered. So in the second kind of a case, that comes under the policies in provisioning or a preventive case. So in the first case, some loss has occurred, but in the second kind of a case, the loss didn't happen. And before only we had gathered, like we have captured that particular identity into policy violation. So these are a kind of a policies that we would be observing in Sailpoint. So this is just for your theoretical understanding, nothing much. You will be seeing these words in your practicals. Okay. Now policy examples. So what we have here, detect a user with or who will have conflicting access, separation of duties. So we call them as SODs in Sailpoint. So in your interviews, if you are trying for an interview, they will be asking you a question like, have you worked on SODs? Okay, SODs means separation of duties or segregation of duties in Sailpoint. Next, detecting a user who has not logged into an application in a period of time, which is called as a dormant account detection, comparing the last login date to the today's date. So this is one kind of a policy, like I'm not logging into a certain application for certain duration of time. Hence, a policy violation will be triggered on this identity. Next, detect a non-manager having a manager application. So there will be a case in your organization you may be observing. There will be two kinds of managers. So manager based upon the designation and their experience, and manager who is handling a team. Okay, so who will be taking care of your appraisals, your approvals, or whatever the activities that have been performed for an employee. So those data will be captured by a employee. Okay, so that comes under the manager. Okay, non-manager means like he is not acting, like he is just designated as a manager, but he will not be having an access just like the manager. So manager will be having certain applications access like appraisal cycle access. The non-manager should not be having it. So like that you can understand. And detecting users with more than one account on any given application. So there may be a situation like users should have only one account per application. For example, you may be using a Netflix or Amazon, right? So it will be restricting only 5 users having an account in one application. Not more than 5 users you cannot log in for one application. So like that, if you are not a prime subscription, you have not subscribed also, it will be allowing only for one user like that. So some kind of a restrictions that you will be seeing, right? The similar way here, we have the policy to monitor the user should not have more than one account per application. That is the intention. So these are the different examples for policies, and based upon these different examples, we have different types of policies configured here. Okay, so we have policies like a role SOD policy. What is their usage? Monitor for identities with the roles that conflict. Okay, so developer is one role, tester is one role. So these two roles should not be allocated to one person. Same way. Entitlement SOD policy, accesses. Okay, so development server access and testing server access, entitlements. So these two also should be given to one particular person. If it is given to one person, that particular identity will be coming under a policy violation. So that is an entitlement SOD policy. Monitor for identities with entitlements or identity attributes that conflict. Next, activity policy. Flag identities with monitored activities. So activity policy deals with your entire quarterly or quarterly cycle. You can understand first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. How is your structure? What are all the activities that have been performed in the organization? What is the action items, your logins, logouts? So everything will be taken care under this activity policy. Flag identities with monitored activities. Next, account policy. So account policy, identities, identify identities who have more than one account per given application. So that triggers this account policy that is configured by the account policy. Risk policy. So in the beginning I explained about the risk, right? It's a numerical value that we will be allocating to every identity in the organization. So monitor the identities with risks higher than the threshold. So the risk scoring or risk value ranges from 0 to 1000. So we can put a threshold limit of 800. So people, whoever the risk score is getting more than 800, those people will be captured under the policy violation. So that configuration is called as a risk policy in Sailpoint. That's all. Next, we have advanced policy. So advanced policy means if all the above policies are not satisfying the client requirement, then you must create a new policy type. So a custom rule you will be writing in, and that comes under the advanced policy in Sailpoint. So that is how the advanced policy will be triggered. Next. So this is the policy definition UI. So you have name of the policy, owner details, policy violation, owner details. So manager is a violation owner. So this kind of an information you have it. And description, you can put the description that is being given to you. Violation formatting rule, and violation formatting rule means like if you wanted to represent the resulting violation in a different format. So you can just how do you want to represent a different format, like if you want to send a notification directly to the manager, or if you want to take a direct decision on that particular policy violation, those all things will be defined over here. Next, violation business process. So here in the business process, you have run when the violation is detected. So these activities that you will be performing when any workflow is being created. So when any action item that you wanted to take in, you will be putting this violation business process. That's all. Next, state inactive. So you need to make active or inactive to make this policy enable or disable like that. So if the policy is not enabled, people won't be like following this kind of a content, right? So that comes under this state. Next, send alerts. So to send any notifications, if any person has done a policy violation and you want to send a notification, you will be using this send alerts criteria. Okay. So you'll be enabling that checkbox to send the alerts to different managers. And if you want to send the reminders also, if you want to send the escalation mails also, you can send it by selecting this checkbox. So below this, you will be having one kind of a tab called as a create rule button. Okay. This particular data filling form will be same for every policy, but below this form, you will be having a configuration specific to that particular policy. So you'll be having a button called create new rule. Under that, when you click on that, it will open a new form where you will be filling this kind of an information, like what information to be displayed to the identity or the employee. Those informations you will be seeing it over here, and post that you will be following with the other data. Next, policy violations. So you have the task to execute. So you can just go ahead run the task called as check active policies task. So once you run that particular policy, all the policy violations, people who ever done the policy violations, those data will be triggered, and the data like the managers will be receiving the notification to correct the policy violation. That is the intention. Next. So how do you handle the policy violations? So refresh task checks each identity for violations. If found, violations are handled based on the configurations. So like notifications, ownership, business process. So these are all the things that will be considered. Policy violations can be seen on the identity cube. On the My Work policy violations tab, you will be able to see the policy violations. In every identity, like if I log in as a manager, I'll be able to see My Work and policy violations tab. If any of my identity, my employee has done a policy violations, I can just trigger it from there. Next, during certification. So when you are doing the certification, if you want to review any certificate, any policy also, you can include. If you want to include any policy violation, so you can include under the certifications criteria. When you are creating certifications, there will be a checkbox called include policy violations. So that also can be happen. Next, using the reports. So we have some reports, right? Based upon the reports also, you can trigger the policy violation. Next, using the API. So API will be utilized to get the Sailpoint UPIs to get the Sailpoint data and put it into the to form the with the use of the Sailpoint APIs, we can create some custom policy data. And this is the identity cube information for policy. You can see the data over here. Okay, like this. Next, My Work policy violations. You can see when you click on My Work, and you will be able to see the policy violations triggered over here. So this is the information. And this is an older screenshot to correct the violation. You will be clicking on the correct violation button, but currently we have it like approve, revoke buttons, allow, revoke buttons like that. So certification. So when you are, this is the certification UI. So when you are creating the certification also, in the first definition page, certification definition page itself, you will be having a checkbox called include policy violations, and you can select that particular checkbox. Next important section, where in the certification itself, when you are creating the certification, you will be selecting this checkbox. Like you will be observing this particular UI screen. So when you are reviewing the certifications, you will be monitoring what policy, where the policy violations will be occurred, where the certification review items are there, and when you complete it, it will be seen in the complete items. So we will be discussing more about this when we come across the certification topic. Like tomorrow we are going to start with the certification topic, right? So this is the extension of policies, you can understand. So policies topic we are already just done, and we are just looking into the certification. In the certification also we can include the policy violation. So that is what we are learning here. So this is also a certification UI only. If you just click on this particular button, you will be able to get the details of that policy that you have triggered. So if you click on a revoke button, it will be showing the two policies, the two accesses that have been given to you. This is one of the example for entitlement SOD policy, where one user have access to two entitlements, input and super. So any one of the access, if you remove it, the access gonna be removed from that identity. So that is the intention of handling the policy violations. Next thing is the reports. So we have certain reports to trigger for policy violation. So we can just trigger them, get the data, store it in the form of a physical file like a PDF format or a CSV file format. And if you want to share it with your client, you can just share it. So that data you can consider under the reporting section. So this is the intention. So we will be discussing about all these reportings under a reporting concept when we come across that. So let me open the virtual machine and start the practicals. Let me open the UI, go to setup and policies. So this is the policies UI screen. On the right hand side, you have a new policy and all the different types of policies that we have it with Sailpoint. So we'll be learning about each and every policy, but we'll be configuring the entitlement SOD policy, account policy, and advanced policy in our project. But we will be going through each and every policy because we don't have the roles, right? We cannot configure the role SOD policy. We don't have the risks configured, right? We cannot configure the risk policy. So we don't have any configuration related to activity monitoring. Hence, we don't have the activity policy configuration. So that's the reason whatever the policies that we have left out with, we are configuring those. So let me open the role SOD policy. So see, this is the configuration. You will be giving the name of the policy, owner details you will be giving, and policy violation owner. You may get it out. What is the difference between this owner and policy violation owner? So owner is a person who is like owning this particular policy because I'm creating or I'm configuring that particular policy. Like I'm defining it because I'm not the developer. I meant to say I'm the application owner. I'm defining a policy like this is so and so condition should be kept. And if any violation happened, their managers needs to take care of that particular policy. So I'll be owner of that particular policy who will be doing nothing, but the violations will be handled by their manager. So I have already configured like manager is violation, right? So whenever any violation occurred, it will be sent to the manager. It will be sent to their respective managers to validate the data. That is the intention. So you can give a name here, owner details, manager as violation owner. If you want to put none means defaultly an administrator will become the manager. Administrator will be taking care of the responsibility. Identity means you can just select any identity from the list. So who will be becoming the policy violation owner. Manager generally will be putting as manager only because their managers will be responsible to taking the action. Rule, if you have any certain requirement to write in the form of a rule, you will be writing a rule to get the information. Next, violation formatting rule, violation business process, state active, inactive, state like this. So you can make it active or you can make it inactive. Send alerts, if you enable it, it will be asking for a template. So we defaultly have an email template like this. You can just select it and you have these information, none, send reminders, then escalation and just escalation only. So these information you can just put it here, and observers, you can just put any particular observer over here. Okay, observer means whenever you are sending a notification, the notification should also include your team lead. Okay, so that person also should be involved. So in that kind of a situation, you will be using this observer. Like if you want to include your team lead into the particular email chain, you can add this observer. Okay. Next thing is the SOD policy rules. So you can just click on this new rule and there comes your actual configuration of your policy type. So these details, it's just an informative purpose. You can just add the details over here. For example, summary, conflicting between two roles. Description, you can mention the role names also. So whenever the user is having a role 1 with role 2, then a policy violation should be triggered. So that kind of a description you can write down. Next, compensating control, you can just give a suggestion what could happen if you how do you take care of this particular policy violation, so that you can mention it over here. Correction advice, so either you need to remove the role 1 or role 2, that decision you can put it under the correction advice, and rest all the details that whatever that you have it you can put here. Next, you can use this any of these roles, conflict with any of these roles, right? That is the main configuration. Here you can add the role 1 and here you can add the role 2. Like developer is one role, tester is one role. So these two roles should not be assigned to one particular user. Okay, that is the configuration, and if they are assigned already, that identity will be captured under policy violation. So that is the intention of configuring this role SOD policy. Similar type we have it is the entitlement SOD policy. So let's configure that entitlement SOD policy now. So just go to setup and policies. New policy, entitlement SOD policy. Name. I'm just giving like test entitlement. Policy. Owner I'm giving as administrator. Policy violation owner, manager as the violation owner. Description, if you want, you can just give it. And state I am making it as active, send alerts. Policy violation, I'm not configuring anything else. So now click on this create new rule. So as I told you, right, these configurations remains constant for every policy that you're gonna create it. So now click on this create new rule. I'm putting some summary like conflict between two entitlements. Like this. Okay, you can give the data here and you can add the applications. For example, I'm just adding one application, adding an entitlement, selecting the attribute and adding the entitlement. So adding one more application. You can either add the different application also. I have added the same application, right? But it's completely your choice. So I have configured these, right? I'm clicking on done, and you can see a run simulation button over here. And also in this rule also you will be seeing again a run simulation button. What is meant by this run simulation button? Okay, and you can see here rule. This is the rule name that you have written. Any of these entitlements conflict with any of these entitlements, that triggers a policy violation. What is meant by this run simulation means it will preview, it will give you the count of the existing identities who have involved in this kind of a policy violation. Just like a preview button in the application, it won't display the names, but just it will display the count of the identities. When you click on run simulation, this identity will be moving to inactive state. This rule will be moving to inactive state. So just click on yes to proceed. And you can see a view simulation button now. Click on that view simulation and you will be able to see the count. See how many identities have done the policy violation based upon my configuration. It's like 48 identities or 48 violations have been triggered. So no notifications will be sent as of now. Just it will be displaying the count to us when we are configuring it, just like a preview. So I'm closing it. So since this particular rule became inactive, right, I need to make it active. Open it, enable this disable checkbox, scroll down, click on done, and scroll down, click on save. So one policy I have configured. Go to setup and policies. See, one policy I have successfully configured. What next? Go to the new policy, activity policy. So we don't have any data of any other applications to configure this activity policy, and it's completely optional. We will not prefer this creating also in real time, but just for your understanding. So you have the time periods, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, like that. And if you have any action items like action equal to your login, log out. So if you want to monitor any such kind of an activities, you can mention it in this time periods, like in this filters, and you can add the filters respectively. So that's the intention. Next we have the account policy. Account policy is a straightforward policy, nothing much configuration is needed. So let me just configure it. So what is the intention of the account policy? Checking for user having more than one account per application. Just account policy, I'm just giving a name. Owner, I'm putting like admin. Policy violation owner, manager as the violation owner. State I'm putting as active, send alerts. You can enable this. And if you want to add any template, we can add it like this. And this, if you want to add some information or description, you can add it here, or else if you want to run simulate also, you can just click on it. So nothing much configuration, no rule, create new rule button is not present. So this state went to inactive, right? Why? Because we have ran the simulation. Scroll down, just make it to active. If you want to see the simulation, you can do it. Only one identity has captured under this violation. Okay, close it and then save it. So now both the policies are in active state. You need to make sure of that. So once they are in active state, we can run the violation. So we have next policy is the risk policy. If you open the risk policy, there is also a straightforward policy, a very simple configuration. You need to give the threshold limit. Your client will be putting a threshold limit, and that threshold limit you need to put it over here, and you can save it. So if you have the risk model configured, or else once after we configure the risk model, you can create this policy for your practice. So that is one thing. Rest all the details remains the same. Finally, we have the advanced policy. So advanced policy, I'm going to give it to you guys as a homework. So the advanced policy when injection is like, you can just scroll down, select a create new rule. Here, instead of selecting any match list kind of, you can just select a rule and you can write a rule. So we have written a rule in our project. There is a requirement like to check an account like an identity who is not logging into an application for certain duration. For example, a user is not logging into an application for more than 180 days. Okay. So if he is not logging into an application for more than 180 days, his identity will be captured under policy violation. So that is the requirement. So you need to get the time, calendar dates, the month, everything that you need to capture, and the current timestamp, the today's date also you need to get it. By fetching all these data, you will be able to get the policy violation, the particular policy that you can just successfully create it. When you run this policy violation, if any identity comes under this criteria, those all people also we will be handling under policy violations. So now we have configured these two policies, right? One with the entitlement SOD policy, one with an account policy. So how these policy violations will be triggered now? If you go to my work and policy violations, there won't be any policy violations as of now, because we haven't ran any kind of a policy to check or to monitor the existing identities. For future identities, it will be monitoring. But what happened to the existing identities? That also needs to be validated, right? So to validate all the existing identities, we will be running a task. What is that? Setup and task. We have a task called check active policies. Right click, execute in background. See, check active policies. You have these policy violations that we have it. Okay, that is how. Next, if you go to my work, policy violations, you would be able to see all the policy violations being displayed over here. Okay, since we have logged in as an administrator, we were able to see all these kind of policy violations. If you haven't logged in as an administrator, we would not be able to see all these violations. Only violations that are being assigned to you. For example, I'm a manager. I have 4 employees who have done policy violations. Only that those 4 employee data only will be visible for me to approve or reject it. So that is the intention. So I was looking at something. Yeah. So you can just click on allow, and you can see this timestamp, right? That is came in here. So any timestamp you can put it. So and you need to put some comment why you are allowing it, because I'm not rejecting this violation. I'm just allowing it for certain duration. I'm clicking on allow button. If you want to revoke it, you can just click on revoke, and any one of the account which is conflicting, that you can select it and you can revoke it. Okay, it's completely your choice. Again, allow it, and any comment you can put it and allow it. So I'm saving 3 decisions. So the calendar time, we are not able to change it, right? It was grayed out. If you want to enable it, like if you want to change a certain time, like if you want to set a certain time to allow it. So for that, you need to go to settings, compliance manager, scroll down a bit under decisions, enable this enable allow exceptions and enable allow exception pop-up. Scroll down, save it. Then go to my work and policy violations. If I allow it now, you will be able to see the calendar. Allow it. Like this, you can just do it. If you want to log in with any particular identity, for example, I'm logging in with this particular user called Deborah. So what identities that I can see it? Only the identities who are reporting to that person will be visible. I logged in with Deborah Wood now. Now I'm going to my work and policy violation. So Deborah Wood is a manager for these 4 identities. So these 4 identities got captured under policy violation. See, owner Deborah Wood, Deborah Wood, Deborah Wood, and Deborah Wood. Like that. Okay. So you can take the decisions now. Okay, either you can ignore one or you can revoke both also. It's completely your choice. That is how you will be taking the action items. So you have completed 2, right? If you go to the administrator and check it out, some more 2 identities will be into completed status. 2 more identities would be in the completed status. That is the intention that you need to understand. See, under policy violations, you will be able to see. See, total 6 came in here. And for administrator also, we have 2 violations to approve it. So why these 2 identities came for the administrator? Those people doesn't have a manager or what? Yes, those people doesn't have a manager. Since those identities who doesn't have a manager, administrator will be taking the responsibility to complete their accesses, like complete their policy violation, like this. Okay, and this is the intention. So this is how you will be completing the policy violation. Okay, so this is how policies will be created in Sailpoint, and policy violations will be handled by the employees or the managers in Sailpoint. Thank you so much, guys. Take care.